Well, good morning, everyone. Many thanks for coming along to the launch of BE Europe 2011. I'm sure most of you probably know me or recognise me, but for those of you who don't, my name's James Torr. I look after the BE Asia, Europe and US surveys, as well as being involved in their global development. Now, just under a year ago, at the 2010 BE Europe launch, we looked back over the past couple of years to see how the recession had affected the business elite. And we really wanted to kind of get an understanding for what it was like to sit behind their desks. Now this morning, we're going to build on that. A lot's happened in the past year, so initially, we'll look back at that and see how this has affected the business elite. Then helping add to our understanding, we're also going to be showcasing the findings of our business elite attitudinal segmentation as well. So since the global economic downturn, governments worldwide have introduced austerity measures to help combat the problems. Economies raced out of recession faster than expected, and while an air of scepticism continued to exist, things were really starting to look up this time last year. But with the world changing so quickly, many things can happen in 1 year, and they certainly have. The past year has been by no exception very, very eventful. I'm sure many of you can remember this, back to December 2010. It was the coldest December in 100 years, resulting in the worst snowfall in decades. But much worse was to come, and in reality the snow was really inconsequential compared to other global events that had taken place since last year's launch. The Japanese earthquake and tsunami was a humanitarian disaster, and one of the side effects of this was that the economic impact on Japan and the rest of the world. And of course, there's the ongoing crisis in the Middle East as well. And now there's the latest turmoil of America's credit downgrade, and the Eurozone debt saga have sent shockwaves through the rest of the world. Unlike 2008, when the politicians were looking on bewildered and helpless at this financial crisis they failed to comprehend, the 2011 vintage of economic and financial crises on both sides of the Atlantic has the politicians centre stage. So the government's handling of these crises are starting to be questioned. So again, we're facing uncertain times. Last year we talked about how many economists have been unable to predict what would happen. Now how governments are handling the crises is coming under ever-increasing scrutiny. Have they got it right? No one seems to really know. What we do know is that the business elite, those most important and senior people in the largest corporations, those who are closest to their industries and markets, are best placed to predict what will happen. And this rings true. Back in March of this year, we asked them their view of what the economy would look like in 6 months' time, i.e. now. Compared to their response at the same time in 2010, we see a much larger number predicting a weaker economy this time around. Because of who they are, they have the foresight to predict what will happen. So while the economy continues to shift and change, what isn't changing is the presence of the business elite. They remain as important as they always have, possibly even more so given the current economic situation. Almost 2/3 are C-suite, and they look after the interests of 1.4 billion employees. Although they are small in number, their influence is far-reaching. A continued understanding of them becomes vital. So what's actually going on in their world? Well, volatile markets and managing economic uncertainty remains the key issue for many of the business elite. The price of fuel remains under pressure, which has been further compounded by the Arab Spring. And it's therefore no surprise that this represents the fastest growing concern among the business elite, increasing year on year by 71%. China's industrial production continues to drive this populous nation forward. And while there was a brief panic over a slump in exports, over half the business elite view China as leading the world economy. Just this morning I was watching BBC World News and they announced that China now has 271 billionaires. And it's China that's becoming of ever-increasing importance to the business elite. While interest in Brazil, Russia, and India does fluctuate, it still does exist. But it's China that sees consistent year-on-year growth of business involvement. Exports to China are soaring. Italy and France lead the increase in growth of business done with China. A large contributing factor to this would be the growing demand for high-end and luxury products. Improved Sino-French relations will have also helped. With the recent agreement of £1.4 billion of trade deals between British companies and China, I'm sure that in the coming years we will see the business elite in Great Britain expanding to also do more business with China. When it comes to money, whether it be budgets they control or their personal fortunes, the business elite remain a key group that cannot be ignored. While we still enable you to reach those with the largest budgets, these have changed. Last year, as optimism started to grow, we saw budgets starting to shift back towards those 2008 highs. However, with all the recent events and slow growth in quarter 1 and 2 of this year, budgets have been revised down again. Apprehension about the future certainly exists. The faltering growth we've seen this year in the recent dipping stock market is again affecting their net worth. While it remains high, they're certainly not impervious to what is happening. And they continue to shun riskier short-term investment opportunities in favour of saving for the future. And as we saw last year, it's always those with the highest salaries who continue to increase their wealth. And this is something that certainly hasn't changed this year, with those savviest of investors continuing to increase their wealth. When looking at their salaries, yes, they have been affected, but it's all relative. And almost 8 times that of the average European salary, they remain the top earners, continuing to spend as they have done previously. Airline losses for 2011 are being forecast at the lowest in the past 3 years. However, with the Arab Spring and budget being cut, who knows what is around the corner? The people who fly in business and first remain the most important passengers for many airlines. Although representing less than 10% of travellers, they represent around 30% of total revenues. And these are the people that we reach on the survey. The business elite continue to take a huge number of flights. Over a third regularly travel in business or first class. Now, as per last year's launch, we showed the individual media brand results in the breakfast area this morning. Don't worry, if you didn't get the chance to see them earlier, there'll still be the opportunity to view these after this presentation. So what are the latest media consumption trends amongst the business elite? Digital continues to grow with importance. Looking at the global B barometer study, year-on-year smartphone usage has increased to 80%. The latest results from the Ipsos Tech Tracker survey place tablet usage in the UK general population at only 5%. Among the global business elite, the corresponding figure is nearly 6 times this, at 29%. Having downloaded over 14 million apps in the first 3 months of this year, they are engaging with their devices too. The range of apps downloaded varies. For tablets, it sways towards leisure activities such as games and books. And this may not come as a shock to many, especially with people such as David Cameron claiming to be a big fan of the Angry Birds app. And while downloads of business and international news applications top the smartphone list. The growth and availability of information is continuing to increase. The long tail of media content is becoming more pronounced. And while we see them utilising technology to consume more information, what hasn't changed is their consumption of traditional media. They continue to read newspapers and magazines and watch television. And print and TV continues to be viewed as a reliable source for business and international news, with online having grown in importance. So that's what's been kind of going on in their world. Now we know these people aren't homogenous. They behave in different ways. So to build on our understanding of this audience, we're now going to take you through an attitudinal segmentation that we conducted on the most recent European survey. So this year we added 27 new attitudinal statements to the survey to help pull these people apart more, to help us understand them more. Now these statements range from anything to do with morality and ethics, the environment, adoption of technology, status and appearance. And using these statements, we conducted a factor and cluster analysis, which produced 5 distinct segments, all roughly equal in size. And these are the traditional conservatives, liberal individualists, local elite, ambitious influencers, and classic leaders. So over the next few charts, what we're going to do is we're going to introduce these 5 segments to you. And that please note, it's worth noting that the data that we'll show you highlights the most important areas of difference between the segments. And the facts that we've pulled up to look at this, we've looked at discrimination based on index. So this first segment, these are really traditional and conservative in their outlook. Reputation and trust are extremely important to them. It's all about doing things the right way. They have a strong moral compass and like to be in control. They aren't necessarily the innovators. On average, this is the oldest segment, and their use of new media is lower. Maybe not surprisingly, they have a strong financial focus, and you're more likely to find CFOs and people working in banks or insurance in this group. While their net worth isn't quite the highest of all the segments, it is still substantial. They increase their wealth through a variety of investments, although these are leaning towards the safer, less risk-averse, and more traditional areas. Conversely, the liberal individualists are quite the opposite to the traditional conservatives. These business elite view themselves as more relaxed and are liberal in their way of thinking. They are less likely to follow others, making their own decisions and going their own way. They have a global outlook on life. One could even say they're global citizens. They are not nationalistic and view exploring across boundaries as advantageous. They are certainly not afraid of change and often embrace it. They voice strong concerns about the environment, both on a personal and business level, often referring to other countries' environmental policies. This segment is the youngest and are most likely to be female. Heads of marketing have a high propensity to fall into this group. They travel frequently, and they aren't likely to be the people that are sitting on the Costa Brava with a pina colada in hand. They're the experiential travellers. They're exploring remote and far-flung destinations, absorbing local lifestyle and cultures. They share their experiences and opinions. And being well-travelled and with a global outlook, they are well-educated and speak multiple languages. This segment has a strong local focus, but they are not necessarily nationalistic. They are less opinionated, possibly more set in their ways and content now they've reached a prominent role. They have made it within their local community and are possibly somewhat of a big fish within a small pond. And they aren't necessarily the strategic visionaries. They are more behind the scenes getting the job done, the operational people. However, it's important not to dismiss these people. They make the purchasing decisions in specialist areas and are thus a vital group to reach. Out of all the segments, this group are the most likely to be involved in IT and telecoms purchasing. However, they're less likely to work in large international organisations and thus travel less than other segments. It's all about being close to home for these people. how the ambitious influencers are viewed by others is key to them. Image plays a large part in their lives. It's reflected in their appreciation of business advertising and their appearance having to reflect their status. They actively volunteer and network constantly. These business elites see themselves as innovative and influential. Change is not something they're afraid of. They want to be viewed as knowledgeable and as early adopters. People come to them for advice and look at what they say and do as being ahead of the curve. These are the trendsetters. While they're not always the CEOs and the chairman, they do work in the largest global companies and command large salaries. Willing to take risks, they have a wide financial portfolio including shares, equity and index options, and offshore investments. Premium, priority, and private banking indicates a predisposition to pay more for quality and convenience. Luxury goods and services offer them the opportunity to demonstrate their wealth and status. And they take a massive number of business flights every year. They are the seasoned travellers in both their business and their personal lives. These are the people that have become accustomed to travelling at the front of the plane and the standard of luxury that comes with that. And being constantly on the move, this segment are always connected. When we're looking at this segment, the words control and power always kind of cropped up. They understand the power of both reputation and have opinions on anything and everything. Their style is more classic. Yes, they like luxury brands, but it's more likely to be for the quality and comfort. Compared to the ambitious influencers, their tastes are more understated, but certainly no less expensive or luxurious. They are more likely to be male and hold the most senior positions in the company. They are the most likely, out of all the segments, to be either a chairman, president, CEO or MD, and these are the people who are in command of their businesses. Because of their seniority, they represent a group of key decision makers. These people are much more likely to be making those crucial decisions about where the budget is spent. Travel, of course, plays an important part in their business and personal life. With many having holiday homes and yachts, we see that personal travel is frequent and more short-haul focused, though. And an interest in the finer things in life, such as arts, antiques and fine wines, transfers to their financial portfolio. They are much more likely to have alternative investments in these areas. That's the end of the analysis on kind of the segmentation that we pulled out, and we hope this has provided you with a bit more insight into the business elite. The 5 segments will also be shortly available to all sponsors of the survey through the Data Bureau as well. I think in kind of summary, there's 4 kind of key points that we wanted you to take away from this morning. The first was, look, there has been this slow growth in quarter 1 and 2 of this year. So managing economic uncertainty continues to be a key issue for the business elite. They are definitely more cautious than they were a year ago, and this was definitely displayed in what we've seen. But taking into account their spending power, net worth and budgets they continue to control, the business elite are the most important customers for a number of industries. As well as being a key audience for B2B marketing, they also represent the key to profitability for sectors such as finance, luxury goods and cars, airlines and hotels. While continuing to increase their use of traditional media, they also use digital as a means of keeping up to date at all times. And I think the segmentation has helped reinforce our understanding of the business elite. They're certainly not an homogeneous group. Different pockets of people exist within that. So it's important to bear this in mind when you're looking to target these people. Lastly, I'd just like to thank you all very much for listening, and I hope you found the presentation informative and interesting. Thank you all very much.